Thank you for clicking on one of my stories. If you're new to my channel, let me tell you, this is one of the best ways for you to learn English pronunciation, intonation, word and sentence stress. Why? Because reading and listening at the same time is a fantastic way to learn English. And that's why I've written this story especially for you. I hope you enjoy it.
The Gaslighter, a short story by Liz Plampton. It was Saturday morning, and Jenny woke up once again with that old familiar feeling of being sad and melancholy. She knew exactly why, and as much as she tried, she just couldn't shake it off. Jenny went downstairs and checked on her budgerigars that she kept in a cage in the living room. "Good morning, Ronnie. Good morning, Reggie." The budgies were perfectly happy, chirping and singing to each other. "What a mess you've made," said Jenny, looking at all their feathers that had fallen outside of the cage. As usual, Ronnie and Reggie had been busy flapping their wings, trying to take off in the cage. Unfortunately, these two beautiful, bright yellow birds were disabled. They were unable to fly. They had been blighted by a virus at birth, which attacked their feathers and made them fall out. Jenny never thought she would grow to love them as much as she did. In fact, she had acquired them by accident, after she'd given them to her mother as a present, thinking they would be company for her. Jenny thought Ronnie and Reggie would be easier for her mother to look after, being unable to fly, but when her mother couldn't cope with all the mess they made, Jenny offered to take them back. Now Jenny had made it her mission to build up their strength so one day they might be able to fly. "You'll fly one day, I promise, you'll see," said Jenny. "Just keep flapping." Jenny was ever the optimist. She would always make sure Ronnie and Reggie were well fed, although a little too much sometimes, and every morning she gave them extra vitamins in their water feeder. Jenny put her hand in the cage and took Ronnie out. He was more friendly than Reggie. Ronnie hopped onto her hand and stayed there looking at her, with his head on one side. He always seemed to know when she was feeling down. Ronnie made his way up her arm onto her shoulder. He liked sitting there, nuzzling into Jenny's neck and preening her hair. "That's enough," said Jenny, "before you poop on my shoulder," and quickly put him back in the cage. Jenny sat and stared at the budgies. They would sing to her in such a way that Jenny would find herself drifting off into another world, where she was with Patrick, her ex-fiancé, remembering times when everything was perfect. She would often imagine herself dancing with him on a beautiful wooden dance floor at their wedding reception. The one that never happened. As Jenny was dreaming, there was a sudden ping on her mobile. She jumped, startled by the noise. As she was brought back to the real world, she took her phone out of her pocket. It was a text message. "Oh," thought Jenny, "it's from Mandy. Haven't heard from her in ages, ever since she started going out with Josh, her rich merchant banker boyfriend." Jenny opened the message and read it. "Hi Jenny, how are you? I've got some news. Josh and I just got engaged. Thought he'd never ask, smiley face. Would you believe he actually took me to Venice and proposed to me in a gondola? Romantic or what? Anyway, we're having an engagement party next Saturday at my place. Starts at 8. Really hope you can make it. Love and hugs. P.S. We're off to Hatton Garden in London today to buy the ring. So excited. Mwah, mwah." Jenny snapped her phone shut and stared back at Ronnie and Reggie. She hated to admit it to herself, but she felt rather envious of Mandy. Jenny knew Hatton Garden very well, because that's where she went to buy her ring when she got engaged to Patrick. "Some people have all the luck," said Jenny out loud. Reggie and Ronnie stopped twittering and stared back at her. Jenny had been feeling lonely over the past 6 months, ever since Patrick had told her he needed to find himself and left home to travel the world. Jenny always told herself it had been the sudden death of his mother which had deeply affected him and driven him to question everything about his life, including their relationship. She had tried desperately to talk him out of it, but nothing would stop him. Upon leaving, he drove the last sword into her heart when he said, "Don't wait for me." Jenny was left completely heartbroken. Jenny's eyes began to well up, and a teardrop ran down her cheek and splashed into her coffee. "Stop feeling sorry for yourself," thought Jenny, and quickly got ready and went out for a run. She returned home feeling much more positive and decided to accept Mandy's invitation. Saturday arrived and Jenny felt a little apprehensive. She hadn't been out socially since splitting up with Patrick, and she was worried she wouldn't know anyone at the party. She didn't like making small talk at the best of times. Jenny pulled up outside the house and got out of her car. She could hear the familiar sound of people celebrating and laughing and chatting together. "I think I'll go back home," thought Jenny. Then, just as she was about to get back in her car, the front door opened. Jenny could just make out a tall, slim man smiling at her. "Hi," he said. "It's Jenny, isn't it?" Jenny strained her eyes to see if she could recognise this man who obviously knew her. Yes," said Jenny. "And you are?" "Oh, you've forgotten me already, have you? Don't you remember me? It's Johnny, one of Mandy's exes." Jenny instantly remembered exactly who he was. She remembered because this was the boyfriend that Mandy often complained about. She always said he was a bit of a monster, but Jenny was never quite certain why. "Oh, yes, of course," said Jenny, trying not to show what she was thinking. "I remember you now. Sorry, but I can hardly see you in this light." "Come on in then," said Johnny. Jenny reluctantly climbed the steps towards the front door. "It's crazy in here. Can I get you a drink?" offered Johnny. "Oh, thanks. Just a lemonade, please. I'm driving," said Jenny nervously. "Are you sure? You can have one at least, can't you?" said Johnny. "Oh, no, thanks. I'd rather not. I'm seeing my mother tomorrow for Sunday lunch. Don't want to turn up worse for wear," said Jenny, feeling rather awkward. She didn't want to drink alcohol, and she didn't want to talk to Johnny either, knowing a little bit about his personality from Mandy. "OK, won't be a minute," said Johnny, disappearing to get her a drink. Jenny looked around, and just as she'd expected, she didn't know anyone. "Oh dear," she thought. "I'll just drink the lemonade, wish Mandy all the best and disappear off home." Johnny reappeared. "Here," he said, offering Jenny a tall glass of lemonade. "I'm not sure what it tastes like. It looked a bit flat in the bottle, but it was the only one there." Jenny took a sip from the glass and smiled at Johnny nervously. She felt Johnny was standing a little bit too close for comfort. "So, what do you think about the happy couple?" asked Johnny. Oh dear, she thought. Here comes the small talk. "I'm very happy for them. I had no idea it was so serious between them," said Jenny, trying to keep the conversation light. "Me neither. Never thought Mandy was the marrying kind, if you know what I mean." "No, I'm sorry I don't," said Jenny, sounding a little aloof. "Oh, come on. Mandy was always telling everyone how she was never settling down. Not with anyone." Well, I'm very happy for her. I'm glad she's found someone she wants to spend the rest of her life with. Johnny smirked. Yeah, well, he earns a lot. Put it that way. Jenny sensed sour grapes. Obviously, Johnny wasn't able to sweep her off her feet when he was with her, so he's convinced the only reason anyone else can is because of their money, she thought. Jenny didn't like what he was insinuating and decided to make an excuse to move on. Well, I must go and congratulate the happy couple. Maybe see you later, said Jenny. She quickly moved away in search of Mandy before Johnny could strike up another conversation. Mandy, said Jenny as she greeted her. You look fantastic. What a wonderful surprise. Congratulations. Where's the lucky man? I'm not sure, said Mandy, looking around. He literally just this minute disappeared off somewhere. Oh, there he is, chatting to the ladies as usual. Marcus, come and say hello to Jenny. Marcus signalled to them that he would be over in a minute and carried on with his conversation with the group of ladies that had gathered round him.
Oh, never mind him. How are you? Hope you're over Patrick now and getting out a bit more. I've really missed you. I noticed you speaking to Johnny just now, said Mandy. Be careful of him, won't you, Jenny?
Oh, no worries. He's not my type anyway. I'm just going to check on the champagne, Jenny. Make sure it's not running out. See you in a bit, said Mandy as she squeezed her way through the guests. Once more on her own, Jenny took a gulp of her lemonade, desperately trying not to look conspicuous. Then she spotted Johnny heading her way. Oh no, thought Jenny, desperately thinking of an exit strategy. Jenny! Fancy a dance? Shouted Johnny from across the room. Jenny squirmed inside. No thanks, Johnny. I've got a bit of a headache coming on. I think I'll go home. Already? Said Johnny. But you've only just arrived. Johnny grinned at her, and Jenny felt herself trying to warm to him. It can't be that bad, thought Jenny. And I suppose it is a bit rude if I leave now. Oh, all right. Perhaps I can shake it off, she smiled. With that, Johnny took hold of her hand and led her to the living room. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves and dancing to the music. I think it's time I let my hair down, thought Jenny, as she began to dance with Johnny, just starting to relax a little. He certainly knows how to dance well. Then the music changed. Oh no, not this one, thought Jenny, thinking out loud by Ed Sheeran. It was her and Patrick's favourite. This was the one they were going to have as their first dance at their wedding. It instantly took her back to her fantasy world. Jenny suddenly felt weak. You okay? Said Johnny. No, not really. I need to sit down. I think this headache is getting worse, said Jenny. Johnny took Jenny's hand and led her to the back garden. There, he said. Take some deep breaths. You'll feel better in a minute. Jenny thought how kind Johnny was for looking after her. Not too cold out here for you, is it? Said Johnny. Jenny smiled and shook her head. She looked up at Johnny. In the moonlight, he looked rather handsome, with dark hair and dark eyes and a chiselled jawline. She could just make out his designer stubble. He obviously takes good care of himself, she thought. He took off his jacket and put it round her shoulders. Just then, Jenny started feeling dizzy and staggered back a little. Oh, thank you, said Jenny. I'm just not feeling too well. Yeah, I can see that. I think we'd better get you home, said Johnny. Oh no, Jenny protested. I'm okay to drive, really. Absolutely not. I'd never forgive myself if something happened to you. Now give me your car keys and I'll drive you home. Jenny felt totally helpless and did as she was told. Time seemed to just disappear, and before she knew it, they were in the car, sitting outside her house. Johnny was busy looking in her handbag for her house keys. "Don't worry, I can handle it from here," she muttered. "I don't need you to come in with me." Jenny was barely conscious. Johnny didn't answer, but instead helped her out of the car and into her house. Jenny knew that something was wrong, but was completely unable to control the situation. She was at the mercy of Johnny. Johnny led her into the living room and she slumped down onto the sofa. She could just make out the sound of Ronnie and Reggie stirring in their cage. It was a comforting sound to her as she drifted back into semi-consciousness. Then, what seemed like hours later, she woke up startled by the frantic sound of Ronnie and Reggie squawking and flapping. "What's going on?" said Jenny. Johnny, who was staring in at the cage, suddenly turned to her with a look of surprise. "Oh, you're awake," said Johnny. "Yes, but why are you still here?" replied Jenny. "I couldn't leave you on your own, not until I knew you were okay." Jenny smiled weakly. "Thank you, Johnny. That's very kind of you." "How about a cup of tea?" offered Johnny. No, I'll be all right. You can go now. I'll be fine," said Jenny. "Well, if you're sure," said Johnny. Yes, I'll be fine now," said Jenny, feeling totally wrecked. "Okay," said Johnny. "I'll be in touch." With that, he left, closing the door behind him. Jenny breathed a sigh of relief and sat where she was until the sun rose at about 5:30, when Ronnie and Reggie started to sing again. She couldn't understand why Mandy had said such bad things about Johnny. After all, he'd been a complete gentleman to her in her hour of need. That day Jenny went to her mother's house for lunch, as she always did every Sunday. She kicked back and chatted to her mother about everything, like she usually did. Everything except what had happened to her the night before. When she got back home, she noticed 6 missed calls on her phone from an unknown number. "Who on earth is that?" she thought. She immediately dialed the number. Then she heard a familiar voice. It was Johnny. "Hello, is that Jenny?" he said. "I've been trying to get hold of you all day. I was so worried about you." "I'm fine," said Jenny. "I've been having lunch at my mum's." "Oh, thank goodness. I was beginning to worry about you," said Johnny. "Right then, I'll be round at 8. "Pardon?" said Jenny, rather shocked. 8 o'clock? said Johnny. "You invited me last night, don't you remember?" "Oh, did I?" said Jenny, desperately trying to remember. Well, I've got work in the morning. I usually go to bed early on a Sunday night." "Oh, okay, forget it," said Johnny. Jenny could tell he was rather agitated. "It's just you said you needed the company, that's all." "Oh, well, in that case, come over," said Jenny, not wishing to hurt his feelings. No, I was only doing you a favour," he said. Jenny was lost for words. She racked her brains, but just couldn't remember asking Johnny round. She hardly knew him. "You probably had more to drink last night than you thought you did," he laughed. Jenny felt herself shiver. She couldn't actually remember very much about the night before at all, and preferred not to think about it. But now she was beginning to feel guilty about forgetting that she'd invited Johnny round. "I'm so sorry, Johnny. I must be going round the twist. Why don't you come round as we arranged?" said Jenny. "Well, if you're sure," he said. "I don't want to intrude." "Don't be silly," lied Jenny. "Looking forward to it. See you at 8. Jenny ended the call and just sat with her head in her hands. Why did I do that? I'm so stupid, thought Jenny. 8 o'clock arrived, and Jenny once again was beginning to feel very uncomfortable about Johnny coming round. She'd been worrying about it all afternoon.
Did I really invite him round? Did I really have too much to drink at the party? I only had a lemonade, but I did feel ill. Maybe it wasn't just a lemonade, she thought. Jenny was beginning to question everything, even her own sanity.
8 p.m. came and went. Jenny was clock-watching now and was beginning to think she'd imagined the whole phone call. She checked the call log on her mobile. There was the evidence. She had definitely spoken to Johnny that day. 9 o'clock came and Jenny was thinking of calling it a day and going to bed. She was feeling confused, but quite relieved she didn't have to put up with the company of someone she hardly knew. Anyway, she thought, how did he get hold of my mobile number? She was saying goodnight to Ronnie and Reggie when suddenly there was a loud knock on the door. Oh no, she thought, that must be him. He's here. Jenny went into the hall and opened the front door. As she expected, Johnny was standing there with a wide grin on his face. Thought you said 8 o'clock, said Jenny. I was just about to go to bed. 8 o'clock, said Johnny. No, you said 9 o'clock. Don't you remember? You said it would give you time to do some stuff you had to do before work tomorrow. Jenny just stared at him in disbelief. Well, you'd better come in then, she said, unable to hide her disappointment. Jenny showed Johnny into the living room and they both sat down. At first, the conversation was a bit stilted, but as Jenny got to know Johnny a little better, she began to relax and laugh. He seemed to be able to make her laugh about anything, and Jenny loved that. It had been a long time since she'd been able to laugh at all. She dismissed all her doubts she had had about him, and when it was time to leave, she was really hoping he would make another date. So, what are you up to tomorrow night? Said Johnny. Nothing. Well, apart from putting a ready meal in the microwave. Jenny kicked herself for being so honest. That sounds a bit lonely, said Johnny. How about I pick you up from here about 7 and then go out to a lovely little Thai restaurant I know? That sounds great. I haven't had Thai food in ages, said Jenny. OK, see you then, said Johnny, grinning. Jenny closed the door. She couldn't believe it. She had just agreed to go on a date with Johnny. She walked over to her 2 beloved budgerigars. They were twittering away quite happily now, although she'd noticed they'd been quite restless before, while Johnny was there. Bedtime for you 2, said Jenny. See you in the morning. She placed a blanket over the cage like she always did at night and went upstairs to bed. The next day was reasonably uneventful, working as a cashier at the local supermarket. It was never the job Jenny had thought she would end up doing, but it suited her for now. There was very little stress and she could go home at night without worrying about it. But today Jenny was in such a good mood she felt herself smiling at everyone. She felt like her old self again. She was even making small talk to the customers. Life was starting to go in the right direction, she thought to herself, as she asked the same question she'd asked 100 times already that day. Cash or card? At last, 7 o'clock arrived, and Jenny put her coat on, so she was ready to walk out the door when Johnny arrived. She stood there wondering if she'd made the right decision about wearing her little black dress. Is it a bit too short? Is the neckline too revealing? Half an hour passed and Johnny still hadn't arrived. Where is he? Thought Jenny. He definitely said 7 o'clock. I'm sure of it. Another half an hour passed, and Jenny was beginning to question her own sanity again. Should I phone him, she thought. I don't want him to think I'm too eager. By the time 9 o'clock came, Jenny had changed into her pyjamas and was staring hopelessly into the cage at Ronnie and Reggie. There was so much stuff going round in her head. Should I ring him? Maybe he's had a car accident. I don't know, thought Jenny, anxiously. In the end, she got so angry with herself, she decided to ring him. To hell with the consequences, she said to Ronnie and Reggie. After a couple of rings, Johnny picked up the phone. Jenny felt her stomach tense up. Hi, Jenny, said Johnny, sounding a little impatient. Jenny had a sudden urge to hang up, but somehow found herself answering him. Hi, Johnny, she said. Where are you? At home, of course, said Johnny, sounding very irritable. I thought you were picking me up at 7, said Jenny. What? Said Johnny. Jenny raised her eyes to the ceiling, took a big breath and said, You said we'd go to a Thai restaurant that you knew. I don't think so, Jenny. I don't even like Thai food. Maybe you're getting confused with someone else who said they liked Thai food, said Johnny. You definitely said you'd pick me up at 7, Johnny. Stop messing about, laughed Jenny, trying not to show how upset she was. Look, Jenny, I really can't talk to you right now. I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you back, said Johnny, and with that the phone went dead. Jenny just stared at her phone. What's going on? She thought. Am I going mad? Have I imagined it all? Jenny just couldn't get it out of her head. She went upstairs to bed feeling completely confused. Her self-confidence had diminished, and she'd even forgotten to place the cover over the budgie cage. Jenny kept her phone on all night in case Johnny rang, but he didn't. Jenny didn't expect him to. Not after her behaviour. Why would he want to start a relationship with me, she thought. A complete head case who kept 2 budgerigars for company. How could I have been so stupid to think someone like Johnny would be attracted to me? A week passed and Jenny was starting to feel sane again. Johnny was becoming a distant memory. Jenny had decided to turn over a new leaf. She was going to be more positive and move on with her life. In fact, Jenny was thinking of taking a cookery course at the local college. She'd always been interested in cookery. That was until Johnny texted her. Hi, Jenny. Can I come over tonight? What? Thought Jenny. No, keep away. I don't want anything to do with you, she thought. But that's not what Jenny texted back. Instead, she wrote, Yes, of course. Come over about 7. Great, texted Johnny. See you later. Jenny half expected him not to turn up, but when 7 o'clock came, there he was, standing on the doorstep, with that familiar grin on his face. Hello, Jen. Wow, you look stunning tonight, he said. Oh, really? Said Jenny. She felt her face flush with embarrassment and thought she must have overdone it with the lipstick. Come in, she said. The evening went so well, Jenny let her guard down completely and was beginning to think that once again she had misjudged Johnny. Time passed, and after a couple of months of dating, Jenny was beginning to fall in love with Johnny. So when he mentioned moving in with her, it seemed like a good idea. He'd been extremely supportive to her over the past few months, and they got on like a house on fire. So why not? After all, Patrick had told her not to wait for him, although there was still something about Johnny that she wasn't quite sure of. She just couldn't put her finger on it. Ronnie and Reggie were definitely not fans of his, and the feeling was mutual. She knew that. Johnny moved in and everything was going well. He even helped out with the cooking at first, something that Jenny had never been terribly good at. She'd forgotten all about her plans to go to evening classes to do a cookery course. Jenny's life seemed to be completely centred around Johnny's nowadays. He made all the decisions, but that was mainly because she seemed to find it so difficult to make any. Johnny told her so. Jenny would go to Johnny for his opinion on the simplest of things before she could make up her own mind. One evening, Johnny was busy doing some online shopping when Jenny noticed her credit card on the table next to him. "Oh," said Jenny, "what's my credit card doing there? I don't remember putting it there." "What?" said Johnny impatiently. "My credit card," said Jenny. "Oh, that," said Johnny. "Don't you remember? You said I could borrow it." "I don't think I did," said Jenny. "I'd have remembered something like that." "Let's not start that again, Jenny. You definitely said I could borrow it. Anyway, I've ordered a new pair of jeans now. I'll pay you back." "Hey, look at this dress. You'd look gorgeous in that. What do you think? Shall I put it on the order?" Bit short, isn't it?" said Jenny. "Not sure it would suit me, Johnny." "Course it would, Jen. There, it's in the shopping cart," said Johnny. "Oh, OK then," said Jenny, trying to hide her feelings. Jenny wasn't stupid. She was beginning to get wise to Johnny's sneaky little subversion tricks. She felt a pang of mistrust, which was becoming very familiar. She was sure she hadn't told him he could borrow her credit card. Or had she? Over the next few days, Jenny was very troubled. Had she made the wrong decision to let Johnny into her life? She started to think about everything that had happened since he'd moved in, like the time they'd had a big argument about going to meet her mum for the first time. Jenny's mum had been so excited about meeting Johnny that she'd made a special effort and prepared a wonderful Sunday lunch with all the trimmings. But when the day arrived, Johnny said that when they'd discussed it, they'd agreed to wait a bit longer before doing the family thing. "But you said you were happy to come," shouted Jenny in tears. "I said it would be nice to get to know her," said Johnny. "But I also suggested we'd give it another month. You agreed with me." "Oh, well, it's done now. I don't want to disappoint your mum, so I'll come. Don't get so angry. It doesn't suit you, Jenny. You know how your face goes all red and blotchy." Johnny's phone pinged and Jenny was brought back to the present. She looked over at him suspiciously. He always seemed to be texting someone. Jenny had no idea who it was. Every time she asked him, he just looked at her in disgust, as if she had no right to be prying. Jenny went over to the table and picked up her credit card. "I'm going to bed now," said Jenny. "OK, I won't be long. Good night," said Johnny. Jenny went upstairs to the bathroom and decided to run herself a bath. It was something she always enjoyed. It relaxed her and helped her to think things through rationally. She turned on the taps and put the plug in. Then, while she was waiting for the bath to fill up, she went into the bedroom and sat at her dressing table to take off her makeup. She started thinking about Patrick again. Everything seemed perfect with him, she thought. They never seemed to argue about anything. She got up and walked back to the bathroom to check on the bath. "That's funny," she thought. "The door's closed. I'm sure I left it open so I could hear the water running." She tried to open it, but it was locked. She could hear the sound of someone languishing in the bath. "Hello!" bellowed Jenny. "I'm having a bath," shouted Johnny. "You've got a nerve," said Jenny. "That's my bath. I just started running it." "What are you talking about?" said Johnny. "I came in here a few minutes ago and started running it." Jenny stormed back into the bedroom. She was so angry. He knew she always enjoyed having a bath before going to bed. What was he playing at? Half an hour later, Johnny walked into the bedroom wearing her bathrobe. Jenny was sitting on the edge of the bed. She scowled at him. "Come on, Jen, what's the matter?" said Johnny. "You know exactly what the matter is," she replied. "Jenny," said Johnny, "it was me who started running a bath. You must be imagining it if you think you did. Perhaps you heard me do it and got the idea in your head." Jenny was speechless. "Come on, love, let's forget about it now. You'll only get one of your headaches again. I tell you what, I'll run you a bath in the morning. How does that sound?" Johnny put his arm around Jenny and pulled her towards him. "Love you to bits, Jen. You know I do," he said. Jenny feigned a smile. She got up and sat down at her dressing table again. She stared into the mirror, and once again that old feeling returned, the one that made her stomach churn. "Am I going mad?" Jenny thought, as she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Jenny went to bed and drifted off into a restless sleep. The following morning she woke up feeling very groggy. Her head felt hazy, and she felt like she had cotton wool in her eyes. Johnny was still asleep. "So much for the offer of running me a bath," she thought. "But then I probably imagined that too. She thought, while staring at him asleep in bed. As usual, he'd taken up more than his fair share of the bed, legs wide apart, hugging all the duvet. After a shower, Jenny didn't feel any better. She nearly phoned in sick, but knowing that Johnny was working from home that day, she decided to go in. She wanted to avoid him at all costs. For the whole morning, Jenny was all fingers and thumbs, dropping people's shopping. She even dropped a tin of beans, which fell off the counter straight onto her foot. She just couldn't concentrate, and she could see people were getting impatient with her. What was once second nature to her had become a laborious task. She looked at the growing number of customers waiting. The queue at her till was getting longer and longer. "You okay, love?" said one customer. "You look very pale. Perhaps you need a break. Do you want me to find a supervisor?" "Oh, no thanks. I'll be okay. It's just a bad headache, that's all," said Jenny. She didn't want to be sent home. She couldn't afford to lose half a day's pay. Johnny hadn't paid his half of the rent for the last couple of months. Every time she brought up the subject, he made her feel like a criminal. Suddenly, Jenny felt herself going a little dizzy. She hadn't bothered having breakfast that morning for fear of having to face Johnny at the table. Jenny felt herself sway over to one side and almost fell off her stool. It was at that point that Jenny decided to give in and go home. There was no way she could continue working. Her head was banging so much she would just have to go home and go straight to bed. That way she'd avoid any confrontations with Johnny. Jenny arrived home, hung up her coat in the hall and walked into the living room to say hello to Ronnie and Reggie. "That's strange," she thought. "Where are they?" The cage had disappeared from the table where it normally was. Jenny panicked inside. What has he done with them? Suddenly a million thoughts raced across Jenny's mind. He's never been keen on them. He's always tried to persuade me to get rid of them. And why are they always so restless when he's around? She ran into the kitchen and looked over at the kitchen table where Johnny normally worked. He wasn't there. Then she noticed the back door was ajar. She walked over to it and looked out into the garden. There was the cage out on the lawn, but the cage was empty. She could see Johnny crouching down, doing something on the grass, but she couldn't make out what it was. Jenny dashed out into the garden. Now she could see exactly what he was doing. He had got Ronnie and Reggie out onto the grass and was busy trying to coax them into the hedge. Jenny was absolutely furious. She suddenly felt an overwhelming feeling of hatred for Johnny. How could he do that to my beloved Ronnie and Reggie? Two defenceless budgies that can barely fly, she thought. Johnny suddenly turned to see Jenny. He obviously wasn't expecting Jenny home so early. "What do you think you're doing?" screamed Jenny, as she quickly scooped up the two frightened budgerigars in her arms. Said Johnny, who had frozen to the spot. I was just giving them some fresh air, Jenny. It's cruel to keep them in that cage all the time." "You're not fooling me, Johnny. Not any more. You've always hated those budgies," cried Jenny. "Maybe because you're jealous of them. You just couldn't bear them getting more of my attention than you did." Suddenly it all became crystal clear to Jenny. All this time Johnny had been trying to control her. She'd been living with a gaslighter. Johnny had been manipulating her, undermining her self-esteem, wearing her down over time with his blatant lies and passive-aggressive behaviour. Well, now he was going to see another side of her. How dare he think she was so weak? How dare he think he could take over her life and have everything his own way? "I don't know why you're getting out of your pram about it, Jen. You never really loved those budgies," said Johnny. "If you did, you'd set them free. You should be ashamed of yourself keeping those birds in a cage. They're wild animals, you know. I'm the one who really cares. At least I tried to set them free." "They can't fly!" screamed Jenny. "They wouldn't stand a chance in the wild. 5 minutes more and next door's cat would have eaten them." "Jenny, keep your voice down," said Johnny. "The whole neighbourhood can hear you. Stop making such a big deal of it. You're overreacting as usual. They're just a couple of budgerigars." Jenny could no longer control herself. "Out!" she cried. "What?" said Johnny, completely shocked. "You heard me," said Jenny. "Get out!" "Jen, stop it. You know you don't mean it. Control yourself. You get yourself all upset again," said Johnny, desperately trying to control the situation. "Johnny, if you don't leave now, I'm calling the police," said Jenny. "You can't do that. They won't take any notice of some mad woman screaming down the phone," laughed Johnny. At this point, Jenny thought her head would explode. How could she have been so stupid all this time? Why hadn't she trusted her gut instinct? "Come on, Jenny, I'll put you to bed and bring you a nice cup of chamomile tea. Just how you like it. It's your favourite. It'll calm you down." Jenny knew she had to calm down for the sake of her own sanity. She had to control herself now. She had to calm herself enough to be taken seriously. Jenny summoned all her mental strength and looked at Johnny straight in the eye and said, "Get out of my house." Johnny could see for the first time that Jenny was a force to be reckoned with. She scared him. You're making a big mistake, Jen. Don't think I'll be back, because I won't. You'll end up being one of those bird ladies," he laughed nervously. Jenny just stared at him. Johnny instinctively knew his time was up. With that, Johnny went upstairs, packed a case and came down. Jenny just stood at the front door, holding it wide open. "You'll be sorry," he muttered as he pushed past her. Get out and stay out, you snivelling little coward. Jenny slammed the door. She stood perfectly still for a moment, waiting for her heart to stop pounding. Then she walked into the living room and broke down in tears. Half of her was sorry that the relationship had to end this way, and the other half was feeling triumphant because at last she had stood up to Johnny and his controlling ways. She looked over at Ronnie and Reggie. They were very quiet. As usual, they seemed to know how she was feeling and looked as if they were feeling her pain. Jenny felt too weak to go over to them, but just sat there, feeling numb. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. "Oh no," thought Jenny. "He's back." Her heart started racing again as she managed to stand up. She walked to the door and wondered whether she should open it. He might have decided to get his revenge, thought Jenny. No, he wouldn't do that. He's a coward. He doesn't do confrontation. He'll just find some other unsuspecting victim to control. Jenny picked up an umbrella that was propped up in the corner to defend herself with, just in case, and once again summoned every ounce of her strength of mind. She turned the handle on the door and wrenched the door open with all her might. She was ready for anything. "Hello," said a familiar voice. Through her tears, she couldn't quite focus on the man that was standing at the door. "What?" said Jenny, trying desperately to place the voice. "It's me, Patrick." Jenny quickly wiped the tears from her eyes. She was stunned. "Hello?" she said. They both looked at each other for what seemed like a lifetime for Jenny. At that moment, Jenny felt she could have died and gone to heaven, then and there. She felt such complete love and happiness. Patrick took hold of her hand and squeezed it, just as he used to. Oh, how Jenny had missed him. Without any questions, they embraced. Nothing at all needed to be said. Whatever had happened in the past didn't matter anymore. All Jenny knew was that she loved him, and that was the only thing that mattered. They belonged to each other. The end.
Hope you enjoyed it. For more stories, just go here. Love and peace.